Sister demands I cancel my proposal on our cherished beach due to her breakup, but I refuse to change plans. I'm a 26-year-old woman, and after 4 amazing years with my boyfriend, 27, I've decided I want to propose to him. He truly means the world to me, he's my best friend and the one I want to spend my life with. We've talked about marriage before, and he's always been so eager to pop the question himself. I know he's been quietly saving up for a ring, even though as an artist, money can be tight for him. He's just too proud to accept any help from me, which drives me a little crazy sometimes. Last month, everything changed. His mom had to get surgery, and the medical bills ended up being enormous. For some reason she doesn't have health insurance, I still don't know why. He took a good chunk out of his savings to help his parents cover those bills, never mentioning any of this to me. I only found out because I saw him crying in our room, clearly devastated. He broke down and told me everything how he planned to propose on our anniversary, but now, after helping his mom, he didn't have the money for a ring. Watching him apologize over and over hurt so much. He kept saying he was sorry he couldn't give me a proper proposal. Honestly, I don't care about a ring or any grand gestures, I just want to marry him. I'd be thrilled with a courthouse wedding. I tried telling him that, but he's stubborn. These traditions matter to him. I may have yelled at him a bit for focusing on the wrong things. It was just so frustrating that he thought he was letting me down. He told me he just needed more time so he could do things right and give me the best. But I don't want to wait. Instead, I'm going to do something about it myself. I've decided I'll propose to him on our anniversary, on the beach we both loved as kids in our hometown. I'm picking up the ring next week, and honestly, I can't wait. This place means so much to us. That's when my older sister, 28, found out. She happened to see a photo of the ring when she visited over Christmas, so I shared my plan with her. She just went quiet, then asked if I was joking. Turns out, she'd caught her boyfriend of 2 years cheating on her on that same beach. She broke up with him back in September, but she never told me the real details. She's been pretty wrecked ever since. She was sure he was the one and his betrayal hit her hard. Now, she wants me to completely change my plans and pick a different location. I understand her pain, but I really don't see why this should affect my proposal. That beach is special for me and my boyfriend, too. We go there together every time we're home. It's our place just as much as it's her place of heartbreak. She started accusing me of being selfish and trying to hurt her by choosing that location, as if I was deliberately reminding her of that trauma. Then she turned on my boyfriend, claiming he should be ashamed that he hasn't proposed himself by now. I shut that down right away. He's had enough on his plate. The rest of her visit was tense, and when she left, she was crying, calling me heartless. Now she keeps texting, insisting my engagement isn't important enough to bring up old memories and demanding I change the location. The guilt is gnawing at me because we've always been close. I hate the thought of hurting her, but I also feel like she's being unreasonable. The place means just as much to me, and my boyfriend as it does to her, in a completely different way. I don't want to cut her off. She lives with our parents and we're a close family. But I'm not changing my plans, no matter what. I'm just at a loss. Should I try to comfort her more, or do I need to stand my ground? Am I truly being selfish? I can't tell if my guilt is justified, or if this is her way of coping. All I know for certain is that I'm not giving up on my proposal, no matter what anyone says. It was exactly how I hoped it would be. I remember us walking along the shore, the sun setting, my heart pounding, and then I got down on one knee. I started telling him all the reasons I love him. I couldn't even get 30 seconds into my speech before he threw his arms around me, tearing up and getting all emotional. It was the most beautiful moment. I can't remember ever smiling that much. He was over the moon with a ring I'd chosen for him. We exchanged sweet words, both totally swept up in the moment. He later told me how much he loved that it all happened at the beach. I felt so fully, perfectly happy. And yes, my sister can go screw herself. We went out to dinner that night, and my fiancé couldn't stop smiling. He even told our waitress, my girlfriend just proposed to me, I'm engaged. Watching him so happy, all of my doubts about whether he'd like being proposed to just vanished. That night was perfect. Later, as we were about to drift off to sleep, I had to ask him if he really was okay with my proposal, especially after how shaken he'd been about the ring. He said he was only upset because he felt like he was letting me down by not getting me a ring himself, since he's been busy helping his mom. She's doing better now, by the way. He promised me that he still wants to put a ring on my finger soon. We talked everything through, and we're golden. I couldn't have asked for a more perfect day. Originally, we planned to visit my parents next. With everything going on with my sister, I hesitated. So I called my parents and told them the good news, I'm engaged. They did congratulate us, but I could tell they were annoyed since I hadn't been answering their calls. I straight up asked if those calls were just to talk me out of proposing, and they admitted they were. I told them that ship had sailed, and it was obviously not happening. Asked if they still wanted us to visit, and they did. Then my sister called me again, raging about how she couldn't believe how petty and immature I was. Apparently, I had ruined her day. My mom had told her about the engagement, not me. I told her, once again, that whatever happened to her wasn't my problem and that I wasn't altering my life because she can't deal with her emotions. She spat out, "Congratulations on your engagement. Don't worry, it won't last." I hung up. So, yeah, safe to say, we're not talking for the foreseeable future. We didn't visit my parents after all. Instead, we spent the next day hanging out with our friends before returning home. My parents aren't blaming me, but now they want me to fix things, because you know how your sister is. I'm done, though. I felt guilty before, thinking I was hurting her, but it's clear she never cared about hurting me. She had no problem saying nasty things about my boyfriend, or our engagement. But you know what? I have a fiancé. Life is good. Have a great day. Update 2. 2 days after my last post, my fiancé came home with pain on his cheek and this weird, jittery energy I couldn't read. He said he wanted to make something right, and asked me to dress nice but not too nice, which is exactly the kind of non-direction he gives about everything. He took me to a tiny gallery where a friend had given him a corner for his pieces, sketches of our hands, a charcoal of the beach at sunset, a little oil painting of me from behind in one of his oversized hoodies. I thought we were just there to look and be cute. Then he got really quiet, cleared his throat, and said he'd been carrying something around for a while. He pulled out a small, beat-up tin from his backpack, the lid of an old paint can, scuffed in silver. Inside was a simple, thin gold band. "I know you already asked me," he said, voice shaking, "but this is me asking you back." He went down on one knee right there, in front of a painting of our beach. "Will you marry me?" I don't remember what I said first, something like a laugh sob of course, but I was on the floor with him, 2 seconds later, and we both looked ridiculous and happy. The ring is gold with a tiny diamond. He told me he'd sold 2 paintings he'd kept hidden from me, and his mom insisted on chipping in, because she wanted to be part of giving me a daughter. I had to sit down for that one. He FaceTimed her from the gallery, and she cried and held up a velvet pouch. Turns out she wanted me to have her mother's opal ring if I wanted to wear that sometimes too. We picked it up the next day and took it to a jeweler to make sure it was secure. I've never felt so loved and chosen by a family that isn't mine. We decided to host a small dinner with friends to celebrate. A backyard thing, nothing fancy, string lights, a playlist, his famous lemon pasta, a lot of laughter. I told my parents they were welcome to come, but I was not inviting my sister because I wasn't spending my celebration bracing for a storm. My mom did the whole "are you sure" routine. I said yes. My dad said, "We'll be there." I guess word still got around because halfway through dinner somebody knocked on our gate. My heart dropped, because I knew that knock. My fiancé put his hand on my back and said he'd handle it. He stepped outside and closed the gate behind him. I could hear my sister's voice immediately too loud, already cracking. She kept saying something about my beach and "you stole it." He didn't yell back. He told her calmly she wasn't welcome that night and that if she wanted to talk to me, she could text me when she was ready to be respectful. She tried to push past him and he just didn't move. The stillest I've ever seen him. After a minute, she left. 10 minutes later, my phone lit up with a message from her I honestly wasn't expecting. It was long and messy and it didn't come with an apology tied in a bow, but it was also the first time she told me the truth. Back in August, before she caught her ex on the beach in September, she'd bought a ring. She'd planned to propose to him there. She'd carried that ring around for weeks, waiting for the light to be right and for him to feel easy, which broke my heart in a way I didn't know it could. The night she found him, she was on her way to finally do it. The ring was in her pocket. She said when I told her my plan, all she could see was herself stumbling around that sand, humiliated, trying not to drop a ring she never got to give. She said when I went through with it anyway, it felt like I was dancing on a grave she hadn't buried yet. I sat on our back steps, phone in my hand, lemon and garlic in the air, friends' voices floating in from the yard. I cried a little. It doesn't excuse the things she said about my fiancé, and it doesn't make it my job to never step on any land that might be haunted for her, but I finally saw the shape of it. I told her I was sorry she experienced something so ugly at a place we both loved. I told her I didn't steal anything, there are no dabs on a shoreline, but I could see now why it felt like a theft to her. I told her I wasn't inviting her to things until she apologized to both of us and stopped throwing grenades at our happiness, but if she wanted to talk to me about healing and not about controlling me, I was here. She didn't respond that night. The next morning my parents came by with a pie and the strained, cautious joy. My dad, who rarely picks sides on anything, told me he told my sister to get therapy or stop calling him to complain about me because he wasn't going to be a messenger anymore. My mom was quieter than usual, which in her language means I'm processing and praying and deciding which corner of the kitchen to cry in later. But neither of them asked me to fix it. That alone felt like the ground shifted a little. There was one more thing. We went to see my fiancée's mom to show her the resized opal. She hugged me so hard my ribs popped and then pulled me into her tiny, bright kitchen where she let me stir a pot and told me about the first time she took my fiancé to that beach when he was 5 and how he insisted the sea was just a giant bathtub for whales. We laughed, and I think I needed that story as much as the ring. After lunch, as we were leaving, she said, "If the beach is your place, keep it your place. Hayne doesn't get to squat there forever." She's slyly wise, that woman. Later that week, my sister texted me one line, "I'm sorry I said it wouldn't last." I told her thank you for saying that, and that we can talk more when she's ready, but I'm not talking about venues, beaches, or anything related to my engagement with her until she apologizes to my fiancé, too. No more than that. She heart reacted it and that's where we're at. We haven't set a date yet, but we decided on something that feels like us, a courthouse ceremony, and then when the weather warms up, a small sunrise picnic at the beach with just a few people, because the light is the best then and the sand is empty and it's ours in a way that feels quiet. He started sketching our invitations. I keep catching him looking at my hand. Update 3. The courthouse gave us a date quicker than I expected. 2 Fridays out, the kind of morning slot you only get if someone cancels or a clerk takes pee. We didn't make a thing out of it beyond what already felt like a thing. He ironed a shirt and then immediately brushed his sleeve against a charcoal sketch, leaving a ghost of black at the cuff he refused to wash out because it's my tuxedo stripe. I wore a simple white dress I found secondhand and my future mother-in-law's opal, warm against my skin even though the building's AC was doing its loud, old building best. Before we got there, 2 strange good things happened. First, his tiny corner of the gallery turned into not so tiny because someone bought the beach at sunset charcoal. He paced our kitchen like a caged comet after the call and finally blurted that the buyer asked if he'd consider a Mural kids wing of the hospital, ocean theme, collars that look like breathing. He said yes, obviously, and then he sat on the floor and cried a little because the words hospital and paid and ocean hit him in the same place. He framed the beat-up pink camlet he proposed with in a little shadow box the next day, and hung it above his desk. "It's our relic," he said, tapping the glass. Second, my sister asked to meet us. Not me, us. A coffee shop near the courthouse, 10 in the morning when she knew there'd be too many witnesses for anything dramatic. She looked like she hadn't slept but also like she'd stopped trying to hold every muscle in her face at attention. She apologized to him first. She said it like she'd rehearsed it and then got lost in the middle and had to start over, which somehow made it land harder. "I said things about you I didn't mean because it was easier than saying what I meant," she told him. "I'm sorry." She turned to me and said the same without the barbs tucked behind her teeth. She told us she started therapy last week. She took a ring box out of her bag and my lungs forgot how to do their job for a second, but it was empty. She said she'd returned it and bought herself a tiny gold compass pendant with the store credit because she wanted to remember her direction isn't somebody else's hand. It sat small and bright at her throat. She asked if she could send flowers to the courthouse instead of coming. I said yes to the flowers. I said we'll figure out the rest low. The judge at the courthouse had the softest voice I've ever heard in a room with fluorescent lights. We stood under a fake ficus that has seen every bad haircut and great idea in this town. He wrote his vows the night before on the back of a receipt from the art store, which is the most him thing. He said he'd spend the rest of his life making sure I never have to carry the heavy alone and that he knew the ocean was just a giant bathtub for whales and he still asked anyway. I told him I'd spend the rest of mine never letting him forget where he put his keys and that I would follow him to any shoreline or grocery aisle or hospital waiting room life sent us. The clerk who had been stone-faced about forms wiped her eyes so quickly with the back of her hand it almost didn't happen. She was strangers who were there to pick up a passport application clapped. My parents were quiet and proud in the way people are when the thing they wanted for you isn't the thing they imagined and it turns out better. My mom had brought a pie, which the security guard very seriously informed us we could not cut in the lobby. My dad hugged my husband and called him son without the pause he'd had on the phone a week ago. Flowers showed up, white tulips, which my sister knows I love, with a card that said simply for your morning. I sent her a photo of the opal catching courthouse sunline. She heart reacted and then sent back a sun emoji like a kid who doesn't trust words yet. We woke up at 4:30 a.m. for the sunrise picnic like kids on vacation. He made the lemon pasta in the dark garlic at 5 a.m. Should be a candle scent, and packed it with 2 chipped bowls and a thermos. The beach was so empty it felt like we had pressed pause on the town. The sky did that impossible slow blooming blue that makes everyone a photographer. We put the blanket down in the same spot we've always wandered toward without really deciding. He took the compass pendant idea and slipped a tiny compass he'd found at a thrift store onto my keychain while I was spreading out fruit, like we needed a secret symbol of us inside the morning. We ate pasta that steamed in the chill, and he sketched the curve of the water onto the back of our invitation mock-ups because he can't help himself. I saw her before she saw us. She was farther down, near the waterline, hands in her pockets, hair in a messy bun she's worn since high school. I felt that old electric fear zip my spine, and then, it didn't sick. She didn't walk toward us. She looked at the horizon like she was being introduced to it for the first time. After a minute, she turned and came up the beach halfway, stopped a polite, almost formal distance away, and raised a paper bag like a peace flag. "Coffee," she said, voiced normal. She told him she was sorry again, directly, no audience. He nodded and told her thanks, that it mattered to hear it. She gave us 20 minutes and then walked back the way she'd come. When she got to the rocks, she took something small and silver from her pocket and held it in her palm for a long beat. I thought it was the ring, and my stomach tried to leap into the ocean. It was a key. She threw it as far as she could into the water. I didn't ask what door it used to open. When she passed behind us again, she touched my shoulder and said, "Please keep this place yours," and for once I didn't feel like there was a trapdoor under the sentence. His mom came late, breathless and grinning, with a container of still warm cinnamon rolls and a printed out sketch he'd sent her to approve for the hospital mural. Dolphins, little cartoonish ones on one wall for the toddlers and sleek silver arcs on the other for the bigger kids, and kelp that looks like ribbons. She made him promise to put a tiny whale bathtub joke in a corner where only we'd know to look, and then she winked at me like I had been fully adopted and she was just filing the papers. We all sat and watched the place become itself under the sun. A line of pelicans sketched itself across the sky exactly like one of his drawings, and he pointed up like a 6-year-old who just saw a magic trick. I have never seen his shoulders so low and easy. Later that afternoon, after the beach washed the salt out of us and we were back home with sand in our shoes and a laundry pile shaped like a tide, I found a letter tucked under our door with my sister's handwriting on the front. It wasn't long. It said she had told our dad thank you for drawing a line and our mom thank you for not making it her job to paste us together. It said she was going to keep going to therapy and she didn't know what she needed yet, but if I wanted to walk the beach with her one morning in March, she'd like to try. It said "I love you" in a handwriting that looked the most like hers did when we were 11 and writing notes to each other with gel pens. I texted back "Yes, March," and booked a seat 7A. In my head. We signed the last of the name change paperwork and he drew tiny waves along the border while we waited for our number to be called because even bureaucracy can't make him stop making the margins beautiful. He came home from his first mural planning meeting with paint across his knuckles and a look I can only describe as fluent in joy. He keeps catching my hand when I'm not paying attention and pressing his thumb against the opal like he's reminding himself of something. I keep catching him not just looking at my hand, but at me, the way he did that first summer when he pretended to bump into me at the grocery store every week in front of the Peaches. Update 4. The children's wing at the hospital smells like oranges trying to make friends with disinfectant. He taped off these gentle curves across 2 long walls and penciled in shapes that only look like anything if you've spent years watching him turn lines into breathing. I stood there handing him wet paper towels and granola bars like a stagehand married to the star, and he kept dropping his brush in the pocket of his hoodie and then pretending he didn't. The first wash of blue he rolled on made the whole hallway exhale. A nurse stopped with a chart pressed against her chest and said, "Oh, the kind of you say to a sunrise." Kids came by in wagons and wheelchairs like a slow parade. One girl with a bald head and a glittery bandana pointed to a dolphin he'd sketched and asked if she could name it Noodle. He said yes so fast I saw his throat jump. There's a little boy who insists he's a shark. He watched in total silence until my husband painted a slick gray arc across the corner and then he bared his teeth and whispered, "That's mine." We decided right there that the shark gets a tiny, secret crown shaped like a bathtub tucked half behind a kelp rib and at ground level. His mom grinned when she spotted it first. He worked with this alert stillness I recognize from when he's balancing on the line between what he wants and what the wall wants. When he sketched the kelp, a brush slipped and put a bright blue dot on my opal. I sucked in a breath and he looked like he'd elbowed a stained glass window. It wiped off. He kissed the spot anyway. He let a couple kids press stars into a patch he marked off small, imperfect, perfect stars with the hospital's washable paint. He told them artists sign their work. One drew a little crooked M and said, "I'm in the wall now," with a kind of relieved joy that made my eyes go hot. At the end of the first long day he slid the paint can lid, the one he proposed with, off the shadow box, took a pencil, and wrote very small on the inside rim, "Find a whale's bathtub." We made a scavenger hunt in plain sight. March came like it always does here, wind pretending it's not cold while your ears disagree. I met my sister at the beach before the light figured itself out. She was already there, shoes in her hands, standing like someone who finally decided the earth will keep holding her up. We didn't touch for the first minute on purpose. We just watched our place do the thing it does with the water in the sky and the birds, like moving punctuation. She told me her therapist makes her say things out loud even when she wants to hide them inside her good posture. "I don't like not being the one who knew better," she said, then laughed at herself and pushed her hair back with the same old fidget. I thought that made me safe. We walked the line where the foam just runs up to your toes and then changes its mind. She told me she bought herself a notebook with ugly flowers on it so she wouldn't feel precious about it, and started writing the honest things down, that she liked planning because it made her feel smarter than disappointment, that she didn't actually know if she wanted a big wedding before she almost had one, that she's mad she forgot how to like being alone, that she once knew gravity. She took a tiny velvet pouch out of her pocket, and for a second the air got tight until she put a piece of smooth green seed glass in my palm. "For refracting," she said, half smiling. The ring box was store property. "This one's mine. Yours too, if you want it." We didn't bury anything. We pressed the glass and the pouch into the little cliff of our blanket, and let the wing do its thing while we ate the emergency granola bars. I always forget are crushed in my bag. She asked about the mural and I told her about Noodle and the shark crown and how he keeps sneaking little jokes into the kelp like a kid with a glue stick and a secret. She said she signed up for the town's beach cleanup the first Saturday of each month because supervision helps her keep promises to herself right now. "Come if you want," she added, "not a trap, just an invitation. No pressure." I said yes to one Saturday in April and left the sentence at that. We walked until our faces were too cold to pretend, and then we hugged, the kind of hug that doesn't mean we're fixed, just that we both have skin. The mural did that thing good work does, it started to feed itself. A local reporter came by and tried to make my husband say "giving back" 14 times. He dodged and talked about colour that looked like breathing and how he promises not to drip paint on the floor more than gravity requires. The segment ran with a shot of Noodle and you can hear a kid laughing behind the camera, and I swear that should be the whole news. A parent walked up to him the next morning with coffee and a card and said his older son runs a little gallery 2 towns over, and would he ever consider a bigger show in August, maybe a series on the way places hold people. He came home and leaned his forehead on our fridge while he told me because sometimes good things still feel like punches until you say them out loud. My parents met his mom at the hospital on a Tuesday when all the blues on the wall were dry but the kelp wasn't. My dad held the stepladder like it was a living thing. My mom brought cut up strawberries in a container that used to hold soup and told his mom she liked her earrings. They watched him paint a school of silvery fish like commas, and my mom said quietly to his mom, "He's very good at making hard places softer." His mom looked at her like the click of a pen and said, "He had to. Now he gets to." I heard it, and so did my dad, and something in the room relaxed. Later his mom pulled me aside and handed me a little folded piece of paper. It was a list of his favorite snacks when he's working and which ones make paint come off fingers best. Her handwriting slants the same way as Laugh does. The judge who married us was at the hospital, of all places, because his granddaughter had an appointment. He stood under the spray of blue with his hands in his pockets and nodded at us like conspirators who ran into each other at the grocery store. "You two again," he said, and the corner of his mouth did a half sneak. He walked with us down the hall and said he liked that we put the horizon at kid eye level. "Most people forget how short the world is when you're small," he said, and then he disappeared into a room with a sticker on it that said "Brave" in 7 different fonts. We found the spot for the tiny whale bathtub crown on a Thursday afternoon when the light made the floor look like a shallow pool. He painted it in with the smallest brush we own, tongue between his teeth the way it gets when he's concentrating so hard he forgets he has a face. He left a dot of white for a bubble and then blew a real one at it through a ring of plastic he found in his pocket because he can't help adding a joke no one asked for. I got a text from my sister later with a photo of white tulips on a waiting room table and the compass pendant glinting at the edge of the frame. She was there visiting her friend's baby tiny, red, furious at air. "I didn't cry," she wrote. "Just breathed." She sent another one, at sunset from the beach, the horizon like a bruise turning into a prayer. "Therapist says sometimes you have to sit where it broke and wait till it doesn't." She added a seashell emoji like she didn't quite trust the sentence to walk by itself. We filed the name change papers and I didn't change mine. He knew before I did and didn't even do the pretend shrug. "You are you," he said, reaching for my hand and then my face like he was signing a receipt made of skin. He drew a line of tiny wavelets at the top of the form where it says signature of applicant. The clerk didn't notice or didn't care. He came home a week later with paint under his nails and a tape measure because they want the hallway with the vending machines to have jellyfish that glow. He told me about the boy who found the bathtub crown and how he wheeled himself back and forth past it 3 times like he was testing whether delighted limits. He told me the nurses started taking bets on how many kids would ask if they could swim in the hole now. He told me he wants to paint a little compass rose somewhere no one expects on the side of a fire extinguisher cabinet, maybe because he likes the idea that direction can be a secret and still work. We ate dinner sitting on the floor because our table has turned into a staging area for paint chip cards, and sketchbooks and a bag of sea glass that multiplied like rabbits. He put his fork down and said, "I want to take a day just us, no projects," which is his way of saying he needs to find the quiet again before the noise gets greedy. We picked a Monday. The beach was wild in the best way, wind and civilized, waves shouldering each other like brothers. We lay there under a blanket that didn't totally win the fight and he fell asleep with his face turned toward the sound like a plant toward light. When he woke up he said, "Everything important I've ever decided happened either in front of a body of water or a plate of pasta," and I said, "We're very hydrated and well-fed decision makers," and he laughed into my shoulder. There was a letter in our mailbox yesterday in my sister's handwriting that looked less like a soldier and more like a person. On a note card with a bad watercolor of a lighthouse she wrote, "I apologized to him in my head for 3 days before I could do it out loud." It counted a little. Doing it to his face counted a lot. I'm going to keep counting in the right direction. She asked if we'd come to the beach clean up and then get pancakes after. She wrote, "I think about being an aunt sometimes and it doesn't break me anymore." I put the card on our fridge next to the little star Noodle drew on a sticky note for my husband when she came back to find her dolphin and discovered he'd given it a friend. We keep coming back to this, pain doesn't get to squat where joy pays rent. There's paint on everything in our apartment right now. The good towels have a few blue freckles and a coffee table has a green thumbprint I can't explain, but it feels like proof instead of mess. He keeps tapping the glass over our relic and whispering yes plus yes, like it's a spell. He still catches my hand without warning and presses his thumb into the opal like he's checking a lighthouse is still there. The mural unveiling is next week. He wants to wear the charcoal streaked cuff because it's his tuxedo stripe. My sister asked if she could stand near the shark with a crown when they cut the ribbon. I told her yes. She sent back a single blue heart and a photo of her compass catching the kind of morning light that makes every good thing look like it was always supposed to be here. Update 5. The unveiling felt like stepping into the inside of a seashell that learned how to hum. He wore the charcoal streaked cuff like he promised his tuxedo stripe and his hair refused to be formal, which I love him for. The hallway smelled less like disinfectant oranges and more like paint finally, faintly, deciding it belonged to a wall. Someone from the foundation had strung a blue ribbon across the entrance that made the whole thing look like a present you have to walk into. They let the kids cut it. The shark boy was there in a wheelchair that had foam fins taped to the sides, brand new hospital bravery beads clinking at his chest. He bared his teeth for 3 different photos and then got this sudden shine as you only get when the scissors are large and ceremonial and a room full of grown-ups have decided you are the son. My sister crouched down to his level and simply held the other end of the ribbon. "On 3, she said, "Stay," and he nodded like a solemn predator approving a treaty. Noodle marched up beside them with her glittery bandana and tapped the ribbon twice with her finger like a king knighting someone and then declared, "Okay, now," with a command voice that would make a general sit up. The ribbon snapped, the whole hallway exhaled again. When they dimmed the lights, I finally understood why he kept coming home late with his palm glowing faintly like he was smuggling stars. The jellyfish in the vending machine hole really do glow soft, breathy blues and violets he mixed until 2 a.m. And then labeled with names like Sea Light and Good Night on our cupboard so he wouldn't forget. The kids yelled in unison in that pure, blunt way kids announce miracles. The nurse with the chart over her chest just pressed it harder like she was trying to hold her heart in and said, "Again, oh." He tucked tiny secrets everywhere like he can't help himself. The compass rose no bigger than a quarter was painted on the side lip of a fire extinguisher cabinet because he liked the idea of direction hiding in something that says in case of emergency. A little girl in a red sweater found it before any of us did and ran full tilt down the hall yelling I found a map, which, honestly, is not wrong. The whale bathtub crown winked under the kelp ribbon at ground level, perfectly placed for kids and for my husband's mother, who pretended not to see it at first and then bent at the waist and gasped properly like she'd just discovered Atlantis. Noodle stood under her dolphin and whispered, very formally, "Noodle the dolphin, I give you your name," and tapped the wall twice with a pat of her finger. The shark boy rolled back and forth past his corner, testing if delight had a speed limit, then looked at my sister and whispered, "It's mine," and my sister whispered, "Yes, without the edges." The judge from our courthouse was there with his granddaughter, who had a sticker on her shirt that said brave in blue block letters and a bandage that made her elbow look like it belonged to a superhero. He nodded at the horizon line like he knew a secret we share and said without making a speech that he liked but the world here remembered kids aren't tall. My dad held a stepladder again like it in feelings. My mom brought cut up strawberries different container, same worry and stood next to his mom in the kind of shoulder to shoulder that happens when you've decided to like someone because not liking them would be stupid. Someone from the local news came, because of course, and tried to hand him a microphone. He dodged it with that soft, sideways way he hasn't said to the kids instead, "What did we miss?" The answers were wild and perfect, a sea turtle named Mr. Pancakes, a crab with eyebrows, a mermaid who definitely uses a walker. He promised on the spot to sneak a tiny turtle somewhere near the vending machines and then winked at me like, "Watch me not sleep tonight." When they did manage to make him say a sentence into the microphone, he went with, "We wanted collars that look like breathing." The cameraman lowered the camera a little like a person who forgot their lungs existed and remembered. After, we found a quiet alcove that looked like a mouth waiting for a sentence and I pressed my face into his shoulder. He still smelled like paint under clean clothes, which is my new favorite cologne. "You did that," I told his clavicle, which deserved it. He leaned his forehead on mine like we are two magnets who understood the assignment. "We did," he said, and then ruined me with, "Us is the color I can't mix without you." We were almost out the door when the man who had given him coffee and the card weeks ago appeared with a boy about our age carrying a portfolio under his arm. "My son," the man said, breathless in the heartbeat way, "the gallery. August. We want to do it for real." The boy grinned without the sales pitch in his molars and said he'd been thinking about a show around place and how it holds and how to make grief share a chair with joy without letting it eat all the snacks. He said the words opening night like they were a spell. My husband said yes and then sat down on the nearest bench like his knees were made of polite jello. We walked out into sun that didn't know it had competition and he laughed into his hands and then kissed my cheek like I was responsible for the light. 2 mornings later we did the beach cleanup with my sister. It was that kind of rain that makes your eyes water and then insists it's not crying. She brought those neon grabber things because she knows I hate getting my hands cold and also because she is currently a person who keeps her promises by building little fences around them. We found enough bottle caps to make a bracelet for a complicated octopus. She kept stopping to pick up those small, wobbly pieces of rope in colors that don't belong to the ocean and said, almost to herself, "If you can't stop everything, stop this." At the halfway point, the water went flat like a pane of glass and then a pod of dolphins arced close enough that you could hear the wet sound of their breath. All 3 of us froze like kids waiting for a teacher to catch them not doing anything wrong. Noodle brought her cousins, my husband said, and my sister let out a noise that sounded like when you laugh and also open a door. We did pancakes with our fingers still prunny from gloves. The diner smelled like butter and burnt coffee and childhood. The waitress pointed at us and said, "You two are the Mural people," and then made us sign a napkin, which is exactly how fancy I ever want to be. My sister didn't look over anyone's shoulder like she used to when she was making sure her life outran its own story. She looked into her mug and then at us. "I ran into him last week," she said, equal parts confession and report. "He didn't see me. I let him not see me." She stirred her coffee like the ocean was in it and then smiled, small and real. I didn't shrink. We didn't cheer. We just nodded like we'd both been invited to that sentence. Back at home that afternoon there was a voicemail from someone at the city. The storm a month ago tore up the paint on the old seawall where the fishermen lean their elbows and tell lies, and they wanted to know if he'd consider a community mural day. Ocean theme, obviously, but also room for little hands. He put the phone on speaker and we stood in our kitchen with sand still in our cuffs and water still in our ears and looked at each other like someone had just said the actual name of our place out loud and asked if we wanted to write it down. He said yes in that careful way he saves for when saying yes counts. We talked logistics until the stove timer beeped itself hoarse and then my sister texted, very casually, "Let me handle sign-ups." And I almost sat on the floor. The hospital gift shop started selling postcards of the hallway 2 days after the unveiling. We found them by accident because we were there to bring cinnamon rolls to his mom's friend and to check on Noodle, who had stuck a glitter star next to her dolphins, "I like war paint." Our wall, in miniature, 12 for $5. The proceeds go to the art car. He bought a stack and then used them as notepaper all day and now we have 14 tiny oceans with lists like eat, breathe, call city re-permits, buy more good night. He spent one late night projecting rough waves across our living room wall with a wonky old projector a neighbor let us borrow, and we drew lines in pencil while the lamplight made the opal at my throat throw quiet lightning onto our ceiling. He wants the seawall to have hands in it, not literal hands, but negatives and shadows, the way the kelp curves where a small palm pressed for a second. He keeps saying, a wall that remembers being touched, and I keep thinking about what a body is supposed to be for. My sister sent a photo from her therapy waiting room of her shoes and the compass pendant and a list in her lap. Wonderneat she wrote, still counting, which is the right kind of math. Later that week she called and asked if the toy drive at the hospital in December ever takes art supplies, and I told her she had gotten ahead of herself in the best possible way. I made a spreadsheet, she admitted, sheepish and proud. Of course you did, I said, and I meant it as a benediction. The first work day at the seawall I thought my heart might just walk out of my chest and introduce itself to strangers. The city set up sawhorses and cones like they could keep the tide back with plastic. People we know and people we don't showed up with old brushes and brand new ones still in crinkly packages. Kids from the hospital came in a slow, determined line, parents pushing wagons and Roman 4-pulls like parades on purpose. Noodle wore rain boots the color of an argument with a crayon box. The shark boy rolled up to the blank section where the wall curves and asked where his crown should go this time, and my husband knelt to his level, flicked his eyes up at me like don't cry now, and said, wherever a king would like it. His mom brought cinnamon rolls again because she's trying to make them not a tradition and it's not working. My dad held a ladder like it was a friend, named Duck. My mom stood at a folding table managing cups of water that kept trying to become paint water and laughing when she lost. The judge stopped by in jeans that made him look like a handsome retired spy and put exactly one dot of paint on the wall like he was signing a secret. The light was show-offy and the wind gave our hair personality, and my husband painted a line of anchovies that looked like commas someone forgot to use and titled the whole thing under his breath, because of course he did, colors that look like breathing. A boy I didn't know with a bandage at his neck found the compass rose on the fire extinguisher cabinet back at the hospital and told us about it at the wall like he was reporting treasure. Direction in emergencies, he said, very serious. I didn't know you were allowed to have that. I think about him now when the kettle screams. We finished the first pass and stepped back and it looked like a story the town had been trying to tell with chalk and bottle caps and finally got a pen. When we took a break, he pulled a beat up paint can lid from his backpack and tapped the glass in the shadow box with one finger. He had unfastened it that morning to slip a tiny pencil line along the inside rim beneath Find a Whale's bathtub, plus Find Your Way Back. Relic update, he said, because he cannot help narrating his own talismans. He got a call on the walk home that the gallery had locked in dates. August is real now. He stood at the curb with his arm across my shoulders like a scarf and said he wanted to call the series Find the Whale's Bathtub because he likes the way the words taste and the way they make a room full of grown-ups look at each other like kids who just heard a treehouse password. He wants to hang the paint can lid in the corner and put a piece of glass over an empty square on the wall with a card that reads, "For what gets made between people." We fell asleep that night on a couch that smelled like salt and citrus and acrylic and woke up to a text from my sister that was only a photo, her hand, palm open, the tiny green sea glass she gave me months ago glowing in the first mean slice of morning. Wonder it she'd written, kept. I pressed my thumb to the opal at my throat like a person checking if a lighthouse is still there and reached over for his hand without looking. He was already reaching for mine. He tapped the glass over our relic and whispered, soft and dumb with happiness, yes plus still yes, like he found a way to make the spell longer. The place where all of it started, the sand in the morning and the lemon and the stupid, huge sky keeps reminding me this, we don't have to win against the hard parts. We just have to make more room for the good ones to sit down and stay.